Well, good afternoon, everyone. I want to welcome you to the Yazoo Backwater public meeting. This is the second session of the day. My name is Mike Reneker. I am a project manager with the Vicksburg District. And once again, welcome. First of all, I'd like to say thank you to South Delta High School for hosting us. And I would like to do a couple of introductions to let you know who's here. So from EPA Region 4 out of Atlanta, we have Miss Janine Gettle, Acting Regional Administrator for Region 4. We also have Miss Katie Butler, the Water Division Director, as well as Mr. Kenneth Dean, NEPA Lead for Region 4. From EPA Headquarters, we have Miss Stacy Jensen, Director of Oceans, Wetlands, and Community Division, back there, and Miss Laura Shumway, Special Assistant at headquarters. From U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, we have Daphne Pitchford, Acting Deputy Regional Director, Mr. James Austin, Mississippi Ecological Services Field Supervisor, and Miss Melissa Moore, Deputy Field Supervisor. And up here on stage, we also have Miss Robin Calasimo, Deputy Assistant Secretary to the Army, Project Planning and Policy Review, and Colonel Jeremiah Gibson, Commander of Vicksburg District. So public meetings are a very important part of the NEPA process, and we are so happy that you are here, that you can hear things about the project, ask questions, and more importantly, give your comments. Our job is to capture all the comments that we possibly can, so we are here to listen to you. So before we go any further, I'd like to turn it over to Colonel Gibson.
Mike. Thanks, Mike. So everybody, just want to offer just a couple comments very quickly. So first, I just want to offer my appreciation for those who helped set this public session up. It's hard work to get everybody here, and so just thank you for coming and thank you for all the setup. Second, it's extremely important to highlight the collaborative and constructive coordinations across the family of federal agencies that have worked together to present this new plan to you. Each bring unique ideas to the table, and we're going to highlight those ideas in the presentation. Third, I want to recognize that this is indeed a new project. So we've been working on this issue for a while. It was authorized in 1941, but we're encouraged with the modern engineering approaches and solutions that we're going to talk with you today on the new aspects of this project. And lastly, I do welcome you to the public session to where we can meet and listen to our neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. So let's go over our rules of engagement for today. Keep in mind that we're being recorded, both video and audio, so this will be made available to the public in the future, and it will be on our website. Questions and comments, we're taking and recording comments today. You're also encouraged to send emails. Email is on the screen, yazoobackwater@usace.army.mil, or you can send traditional mail to the district, and the address is right there. The public comment period closes on August the 12th, so we'll take comments up until that time. Now, for today, when you come up to present your comments, please, number one, please speak into the microphone so that we were able to capture your name and your comment. And number two, there will be a time limit of 3 minutes. And so we're going to have an alarm down there by you, so you'll be able to hear that. Now, if you don't get your comments out, not a big problem. You can get back into the line. We just want to make sure that we're providing comments for everybody and capturing everything we possibly can. In the very back, we will have technical questions answered. So we'll have our subject matter experts will be up there at the board so they can answer any questions that you might have. And finally, let's be respectful and courteous in your interactions with others. And we're gonna make it through this. Okay, so why are we here? Well, it's a priority for not only the Corps of Engineers, but also for all of the interagency partners to provide effective flood risk and environmentally sustainable solutions to the Yazoo Backwater area. Today, you're going to hear project backgrounds on the purpose, or provide backgrounds for the proposed action. We're going to present the draft EIS. And again, comments will be received through the 12th. Here's our public meeting schedule. So far, we've had our virtual meeting last week, and we had a session this morning. We will have another session today at 6 o'clock here. Tomorrow, we will do 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and 6 o'clock at the Vicksburg Auditorium. And again, the draft EIS is out and is open for public review and comment. 45-day period ends on August the 12th. After that point, the team will start to consider all the comments, and any responses to the comments can be found in the final environmental impact statement. Okay, and now if I can get this to work, we're going to see a video from the Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, Mr. Mike Connor. Give me just a second, everybody. Excuse me, y'all. Sorry.
Okay.
There we go. Okay, we're back on track now. Sorry about that. I'm going to now turn it over to Robin.
Okay, thanks. As it's been said, my name is Robin Colosimo, and I work for Mr. Connor, who you just heard from a moment ago. We are a small oversight office that oversees the Corps of Engineers, and only the highest of priority actions actually rise to our level in terms of this engagement. My boss is one of 6 Assistant Secretaries of the Army, and as he said, he's a Biden-Harris administration official. Overarching today, what's important for you to know is that we're approaching an important juncture in our progressive interagency work. We're seeking to resolve complex challenges with communities that are long overdue. I think you all have felt that for many, many years. I want to thank you in advance for your time, input, and continued engagement. Next slide. You all know this better than I, but the Yazoo backwater flooding is complex, long-standing, and it's a challenge to the region. The recurring flooding is problematic, and at its core is we are trying to find an implementable solution within implementing authorities of the agencies, and that has not been achieved to date, as you all know. The most recent floods in 2019 and 2020 were really the impetus for the work that happened. But what you saw in 2019 and 2020 really demonstrate this is a cross-cutting issue, right? It's not just flooding to people and to farms, but it's to the environment and communities. Next slide. Since 2022, we have been trying to take a whole-of-government approach from the onset, and that's at the policy level. So for those of you who may have been at the hearings that opened this dialogue, it was 6 policy officials that came from DC to talk about this project. I will tell you, that is rare. It was a demonstration of the challenge we had before us. And what we were challenged as agencies to do was to craft solutions within those implementing authorities. In 2023 is when the work actually started, and it was guided with both regional executives and technical folks, as well as the people in the headquarters offices of those agencies. In my experience, this is the most progressive work among the agencies that I've seen crafting these solutions that you'll hear more about today. Our focus since 23 forward has been to deliver for the community at large, and we're trying to set a new standard for interagency collaboration through this work, but hopefully it will benefit other communities. We conducted substantive outreach sessions, which is also unusual to include folks from the region, DC, and the field. Those folks with the boots on the ground were as involved as the folks above who had to clear some of these issues. Overarchingly, what we heard was the recurring floods continue to be a big worry. No one wants to repeat 6 months of standing water, a frustration with lack of collaborations among the agencies, and the key issue really was diverse issues and trade-offs exist. The persistent areas of concern really fell into these 5 buckets from my view. The need for compensatory mitigation, had to identify a need, the strategy, and the timing. We were worried about the impacts to overburdened and underserved communities, impacts to the functions and values of floodplains and wetlands, endangered species in wetlands, and the perceptions that the pumps were only to support agricultural production. Next slide. What grew out of that effort was really, for me, the simple 3 statements here. It was about looking at the flood risk management for communities. It was also about targeting those communities, right? So the primary residences, the roads isolating them, the infrastructure, the commercial properties, the things that actually have a lot to do with your community, what drives those communities, where you live, where you work, but also the environment in which you live in. And really key was not optimizing one purpose over the other. And I think in prior efforts, folks have felt like flood risk was being prioritized over the impacts. What has happened in this process is having those 3 agencies, particularly that's EPA, Fish and Wildlife Service, and Army Corps, collaborating in the development of this new alternative was the unprecedented work. Instead of developing a solution that the Corps was informed by those other agency efforts, they were at the table helping us understand how they saw their equities and responsibilities to help formulate and craft a solution that's implementable. That's it for me.
Now we're going to turn it over. Hit the next slide, please. Now we're going to turn it over to Mr. Corey Winders, the branch chief for our H&H section.
So good afternoon. So I'm going to focus on the image on the left side of the screen just for a few minutes here. I'm going to give a 30,000-foot view of this area. So we're talking about the southern half of the Yazoo Basin, northwestern part of the state of Mississippi, and the protection that this serves. So the Mississippi River levee there is on the west side, protects this backwater area from the Mississippi River. And on the south side, you have the Yazoo Backwater Levee, Will Whittington Levee, and some other levees that provide protection going up the east side. So this image of a bathtub is very accurate, very true for what we see in this part of our state. So the Still Bayou and little sunflower structures are there kind of on the southern end of the bathtub. And that's the only access we have that drains water from this area when we see flood events. So the way this operates is when the Yazoo River gets higher than the interior, we have to close the gates so that we don't let water into the backwater area. And likewise, when the interior is higher than the Yazoo River, we can open the gates and let water from the interior out. So it's the previous one where the Yazoo River is high and we have to shut the gates, and then we get a lot of rainfall in the interior. That's the situation when we have the backwater flooding we're talking about. And I'll talk a little bit more about the proposed plan and some details about that in a few slides.
Next, we'll turn it over to Tim Axman of our Planning Division.
Good afternoon. I am Tim Axman. I'm a branch chief in the Regional Planning Office for Lower Mississippi Valley. My task here is to kind of describe what the planning team's charge was, the process, and the alternatives we developed and how we did that. Our basic charge was to develop a set of alternatives, evaluate those, provide Secretary Connors with information to enable him to make an informed decision. To do that, we use a risk-informed process, which means we use the information we have available to us. But as new information is developed, such as the feedback we're getting from the public, we incorporate that into the decision. The basic objectives we have, right off the top, it's reduction of damages from flooding, specifically flooding associated with the bathtub effect that Mr. Winters just described. Right? How do we do that? Also, how do we reduce levels of agricultural intensification? And that would be the effect of when land does flood, then we have to put an additional effort into remediating that land, and an intensified effort into that. But in addition, we have to consider what's the effect on the environment and the habitats there that other species use. And if we have an impact on that, how do we offset it? These are all things that are of specific interest to the federal government. So we do that looking at a set of measures or features, which are simply different construction items or actions we could take to change that impact. And then those can then be assembled, those components can be assembled into plans. In this case, we have kind of three categories of measures. They are the structural things associated with the pump itself, the location of the pump, how do we connect the pump to the system, what capacity is it, what's the operation. And we also have things like low flow wells where we look not just at the high water, but the low water as well. What kind of things could we do to manage water in a low water condition? And then finally, we have non-structural measures. And those are basically things that if we said, what if we didn't change the water, how could we remove the things at risk from that risk? Could we relocate them? Could we raise them? Could we buy them out? Could we create operational plans and warning systems to address and remove that risk from those things? So go ahead, next slide. So our final array consists really of four alternatives built out of those measures. The first one is something we always look at. What if nothing changes? What's the effect of that? And that provides us a baseline to measure against. Then we also have two water management options, and those are going to be the utilization of pumps to manage water levels. They incorporate some other features too, the low flow well condition and some non-structural in areas where maybe some flooding remains. And then finally, a completely non-structural measure, which is what can we do to remove as much development and land from the risk of water as possible. So now I'll kind of touch on the water management alternatives. Within those alternatives, the basic structural features, the pumps and the locations and the connections, they're identical between these two options, option 2 and option 3. What is different is the operational period. There's a slight variation in when the low water operation would initiate, and the difference is the balance between accommodating crop seasonal planning and then accommodating environmental performance in the habitats. Did we miss a slide? Let me go ahead and talk about, within both of those alternatives, there are some other common components, and those would be the low flow wells. Both of those are going to include that. Both of them include some non-structural features in areas either below 90 feet or between 90 and 93 feet, where we would acquire properties on a mandatory basis below 90 feet, and between 90 and 93 there would be voluntary options to acquire structures or land, but those are going to be the same for either one of those alternatives. And then finally we have a completely non-structural alternative, which would be voluntary acquisitions either of structures or land within the footprint of that historic 2019 flood. All right. Now I'm going to ask Mr. Winters to go into a little more detail on what that water management actually entails.
Okay, so talking about the proposed water management solution a little bit. So just heard that they'll be operated seasonally. So that's crop season, it's non-crop season. The two alternatives, so the only difference is you have a March 16th start date for alternative 2, March 25 start date for alternative 3. Both would transition to non-crop season on October 15th. So how will this pump work? So what we're going to do is we're going to track the flows at Anguilla and Grace. So Anguilla and Grace are the two northernmost gauges we have in the Yazoo backwater. So one of them is on Still Bayou, one of them is on the Little Sunflower River. So when we see flow at those gauges, that flow is going to make it to the backwater and make it to Still Bayou. So that is known flow that we'll know is in the backwater. So if we see enough flow that will trigger the pump to cut on, we'll cut the pump on early to maintain a 93 elevation. So we'll talk non-crop season for a second in 93. So what that'll look like is for most floods that you've seen in the past, 1997, 2009, most of those type flood events, the pumps will cut on a little bit above 92, and then the pumps will maintain no higher than 93. In the extreme events, 2019, 2020, the pumps would cut on slightly before 92, like 91.6, 91.7. And we will stage those pumps on. It will not be all the pumps cut on at one time. We'll stage the pumps on and manage to that level. So what that looks like is on the right-hand side of the screen. So the light blue color is the 90. So that would be your crop season inundation. The pink color is 93. So that would be non-crop. And then that kind of yellowish tan color is what actually occurred in 2019. So that's what got up to the 98.2. There's a board in the back that you can see afterwards that might show that a little bit better. But that's kind of the three elevations that are shown on the right. So all those are controlled by the 25,000 CFS pump. So what will that look like in terms of past events? So 2019 event, instead of getting to a 98.2, would have been held to a 93.5. So you'd have been about 4.5 feet lower. The 2020 event that got up to almost 97, I think 2020 saw about 96.8, we would be able to hold it to the 93. So you have just under 4 foot of reduction in that flood. So that's the way the pumps would operate. We have had a question about coming on early, so they will not be turned on early. We do not operate based on a forecast, a rainfall forecast or anything like that. We operate based on rainfall that's on the ground. We do that to all our projects, our reservoirs, any existing structures we have, that's how we operate. The other thing to mention is if it's March 13th, 14th, and it's at 92 or 92.2, we do not draw it down early knowing that March 16th is coming. So the pumps would not cut on until you hit March 16th, assuming we're talking alternative 2, which would be the trigger to go to crop season. So that's when the pumps would first cut on to lower it from the 93 to the 90, or wherever we are at the time, 91.5, 92, something like that. So the other thing I want to talk about is the pumps themselves in terms of when they would turn on, how long they would turn on. So the column on the right is when the pumps would have cut on since 1979. So 1979 was the first year that the Yazoo Backwater levee was in operation. So the pumps would have cut on 20 times in the last 43-year period of record we looked at. You see each alternative there and the number of days that the pump would have been on. So less than 50% of the time over the period of record, the pumps would have cut on, and they would have operated for roughly a month each time they would have cut on, just the average. You can see 2019, 2020 kind of skewed those numbers because at the bottom there's a lot, 6 months almost for 2019. So if you take 2019, 2020 out, if we say, hey, those are outliers, then the pumps would have been on for about 20 days. So a reduction of about 10 days of how long they would have run for that entire year. The other thing that we can look at is we can put in all the 0 years. So this analysis is just on the 20 years the pumps would have been cut on. So if you include all the years that the pump wouldn't have operated and you had zeros for those years, and then you did an average off that, the pumps would have cut on right at 15 days for each year on average. So other to note is the pumps would not have cut on from 2021 to present. So it just gives you an idea of when the pumps would have cut on and how long they would have operated. There's a lot of thought that they cut on every year and they're all the time on. So just a little bit of data behind that. And I will be in the back at the end of this to answer more questions. We have 3 or 4 boards back there that we can help answer any questions on.
There we go. Okay, so that's the water management part. The other part we have to evaluate is the effect on environment, and we know if we lower water levels, there will be an impact on habitats, and so that's going to require some form of mitigation. So the plan to do that is we will secure all that compensatory mitigation prior to the onset of project impacts. That's the first thing. The approach to actually acquiring the mitigation is a tiered approach. One would be in-kind purchase through an in-lieu fee program, which essentially is we work with non-governmental organizations who would acquire land and develop it to offset environmental impacts. The second would be the direct purchase of in-kind credits through mitigation banks that exist within the basin. And then finally, if there's any remaining impact that needs to be offset, we would construct features as part of the project and actually construct those projects. So the status of the environmental compliance overall is there's been a tremendous, as Ms. Colosimo mentioned in her slides, a tremendous amount of collaboration between the federal resource agencies. We've worked through the Endangered Species Act. We're finalizing a biological assessment for the pond berry. They will begin consultation with Fish and Wildlife Service on that. National Historic Preservation Act, we've already had meetings with the State Historic Preservation Officer and tribal representatives. That agreement will be developed and allow us to address impacts to any cultural resources as we encounter them. And then finally, the Clean Water Act, we've also been in coordination with EPA, and there will be a draft 401 statement that in this report that will allow us to begin coordinating with Mississippi DEQ. Mike, back to you.
All right, so let's go over the timeline. So as I said, public review ends August the 12th. From August to roughly October, the team will be addressing the public comments and finalizing the EIS. From October to December, we will have a final EIS, we will have notice of availability, the final secretary determination, and the record of decision. And with that, that concludes our presentation. So now we will open it up for comments. You can form a line or one at a time up here. Remember, we have 3 minutes, and we'll be keeping the timer on that. Please remember to speak into the microphone so we make sure that we get your name and all of your comments.
Good afternoon. My name is Ty Pinkins. I am from this community, from Sharkey County. I have a question about one of the charts back there discussed mandatory buyouts and voluntary buyouts, but specifically regarding mandatory buyouts. It sounds a little bit like eminent domain to me. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And particularly, do you have any kind of mapping that identifies where these properties that have been identified for mandatory buyout are located at? Are they in Anguilla, Rolling Fork, Myersville? Where are these properties mainly located at? I know you specifically say that some of them are in low-income communities and some of them are not, but where are they located at?
Thank you for that question. So I'm just going to give the overarching and then turn it to the Colonel. So in general, this is a proposal, right? And the proposal is that the people at the 2-year floodplain in particular are in harm's way. So the idea is to have a mandatory buyout. There's a lot of details to work out. So I'm going to turn it to the Colonel, but this is an idea we want to hear your input on and how to approach it. But we certainly have to meet with those people that would be affected and, broadly speaking, sort out how to make it work. That's, in the end, part of that process. And by extension, the same thing has to happen with the 5-year floodplain. I think that, to be honest, sir, this is an area of, on some level, cutting-edge approach, because folks are in the harm's way. The question is, how do you deal with folks at the most harm's way and the highest that are not protected but are the most at risk? And so understand there's different communities and they have different needs, and we'll need to meet with those communities to meet them where they're at.
Right, sir. Ms. Colosimo said it well. This is a plan. We open up for public comment. We know where those locations and structures are currently, and we know the elevation that we're proposing. So we can map those out for you and have those conversations. And some of that's probably better on the board and kind of with fingers and pointing to have some of those back and forth conversations for you.
Hello, my name is Paul Hollis. I'm a resident of Rolling Fork. I farm in Sharkey County. I'm also a member of the Mississippi Levee Board. One of the things that I wanted to bring of light, and y'all are aware of this, that this project was a compromise to something that Louisiana and Arkansas didn't want when the MR&T was formed. They didn't want the Eudora floodway because it would flood their farmland, it would flood their woodland, their recreational land, it would flood residencies. So this Yazoo Backwater project, as y'all know, was 3 parts. It was a compromise to what they did not want. And yet they got their pumps, they got their levees, they're able to farm where we're not. So of course, the 3 parts of that are the backwater levee, the gates, and the pumps. And as time went on, we were not given the final part of that project that was promised to this area, and that is why we suffer today. Over the next couple of days, well, today and tomorrow, you're going to hear a lot of comments from a lot of real people that live here, that have experienced this. You'll receive comments through emails from people that live here that have experienced this. You're also going to receive comments from people that join these large special interest groups that copy and paste and send y'all comments that couldn't find this place on a map. I want y'all to hold them to the truth. I've heard multiple times since this new project, Colonel Gibson, that you mentioned, is a new project. And yet they want to go back to some facts and figures that they got from the old project, and one of those being the destruction of 25,000 acres of wetlands. They still harp on that, and y'all know that is not true. They also talk about the expansion of farmland. I farmed for 45 years. I'm very aware of the farm economy and what goes on in this area. There will not be any more farm expansion in the lower delta with the pumps. Farmers cannot afford to farm that high-risk area. So know that what you're getting, listen to what we're getting. I know you do. I'm so thankful that y'all, all three, got together and presented this project. So what is the alternative that we want? We want number two. We would like to see an earlier turn-on date. We would like to see a lower elevation. But we are happy with what y'all, somewhat happy with what y'all have offered us. But those are some things that we would like to see. And I thank y'all so much for your time, and I thank you for being here.
Again, thank y'all for being here. I appreciate the Corps of Engineers, the EPA, and the Fish and Wildlife for listening to us again. And I'm Clay Adcock from Holly Bluff, about 15 miles from here. I've been farming there most of my life. And I hope this panel will consider, like Paul said, the personal input that you're going to hear over the next few days, today and tomorrow, that will give you a better impact of the incomplete project that we're experiencing. I've seen the array of choices. 1 and 4, in my opinion, don't provide any flood control. So I'm going to address alternatives 2 and 3. Alternative 2 sets the cropping season as March the 16th at an elevation that I don't think is the best. And alternative 3 sets the cropping season to begin March the 25th. Both dates, like I say, are later than what I would think would be best for the farming community and the wildlife community and the flora and fauna, the entire environment within the Yazoo Backwater area. If your land is flooded up until sometime in March the 16th or the 25th, a farmer can't, on that very next day that the pumps come on and start pulling it down, can't go out there and farm. It has to dry out. The wildlife has to retreat back to their normal area of comfort, or we can't plant. The wildlife will eat our crops up. So you can't just start the next day because y'all pulled the elevation down a few inches. We can't, it doesn't work that way. And also, the USDA, through risk management, the RMA, require farmers to submit what crops they are going to plant and want insurance on. And that date is February the 28th. Well, the USDA didn't, I don't think they arbitrarily picked that number just as a good number. They based that on science of when our crops in this area are the most productive. And I don't understand why there can't be some cross-compliance between the EPA, the Fish and Wildlife, the Corps of Engineers with the USDA to make those dates, I think, the same. And I think it would be less confusing for everyone and something that we could all work with very well. And also and I'm not sure about this, so don't fact check me on this, but the way I understand is that it takes roughly 6 to 7 days once the pumps come on to reduce it a foot. I hope I'm close on that. Well, the math doesn't work
for me, if it's at 93 and you want to get it down to an elevation that's suitable for our environment, farming, or the wildlife environment, say at 89 or 90, well, you're talking about 3 weeks to a month. Well, in a wildlife standpoint, that some of those may survive and do okay. I have a feeling some won't. But from a farming standpoint, that doesn't work. A month to pull it down from 93, and I'm sure I'm off some on that, but I'd like for y'all to consider that and think about that. Given the two alternatives, if that's the lesser of the evils, obviously I would support alternative 2. But if we do that, I'd like to suggest something else, if you would, to look at as far as the operating procedures on alternative 2, or in conjunction with alternative 2. My suggestion would be to allow the Corps, who are the experts on the water hydrology, the latitude to adjust that somewhat through the years. I think the life expectancy on the pump is maybe 50, 75, 100 years. I don't know. I think in New Orleans they're still pumping, they're 100 years old. Well, we all know within the MR&T area, there are going to be changes in 50 to 75 to 100 years. And I think the Corps needs that latitude to maybe change elevations based on historical data and predictions of current conditions. Well, the elevations and the turn on and off date, I think they need some type of latitude to do that, and maybe that's a percentage annually that they could adjust. I don't know, but I think that's something that needs to be considered for the future. Also, I believe that the EPA and the U.S. Fish and Wildlife, if we implement alternative 2, they're going to decide, hey, I don't like these elevations, they're too high. I don't like this turn-on date. The wildlife are affected adversely. And I believe allowing the Corps to adjust maybe would help them also. So please consider that. Lastly, and I'm going to end it here, we have what's coming up, as we've had many times before, these Yazoo Backwater residents that give you their personal stories of the repeated flooding and how it's affected their lives and devastated some of them. There's no question about it. And some of these are not very comfortable to hear. But what I'd like you to do is please listen to those with open ears and imagine you being in that position, what effect it would have on you. And I think if you do that, y'all will come up with the best decision for the stakeholders in this room. So thank you.
Hi, thank you all for allowing me to speak today and allowing all of us to be here, and thank you for your time. My name is Lee Turner. I work for Mississippi State Extension Service. I am an agriculture, natural resources, community development, and 4-H agent in Sharkey and Issaquah counties. I've had this job for 4 years and 8 months now, and I was hired in December of 2019 in the midst of this flood. And the one word that comes to my mind to describe it is just devastating. And if you look at the environmental damage and natural disasters that have occurred over the last 6, 7 years, devastating is the word to describe it all. But the word to describe this community is resilient. I don't think I've ever been around a tougher community in my life in the South Delta here. It's hard to say everything that's on my mind in 3 minutes, so let me try to hit the spark notes. So as an ag agent, I work with a lot of farmers, and they're my stakeholders. So there are a lot of ag benefits that would come from alternative 2
being able to have the leeway to turn that pump on early because of the soil moisture issue. Down here you have a soil classification known as Sharkey clay, and it predominates the area. And that Sharkey clay holds a lot of moisture for long periods of time. So even though there may be mitigation and reduced flood levels, after the pumps are turned on, that moisture will stay in the soil and you can't get into the field to plant. So that may push planting dates out up to a month or more. Talking with Dr. Trent Irby, the soybean specialist and assistant director of extension currently, he says that for every day after April 20th that soybeans are planted, there's a negative 0.4 bushel loss. So you're losing almost half a bushel in soybeans every day after April 20th. When we think about the environmental damage that occurred, especially during the 19 flood, it's hard for me to have the concept of saving a plant as opposed to bears, raccoons, turkey, deer, and they're all coming back now, but years later, the populations were devastated. Just a few more things here. I saw on the poster back there about social equity and environmental justice. I can't think of a better case, probably in the nation, than for this project at Alternative 2 to be implemented for social justice and environmental equity. There are people here with generational homes that don't want to leave. They don't want to be bought out. Their father built that with his hands, and maybe 10 of their brothers and sisters lived in that home with them. Again, I'm going to reiterate the loss of wildlife and trees and the damage to conservation programs. So what is the cost of having to go in and replant CRP, WRE, etc.? To me, it seems like a no-brainer to go ahead and implement this project, and it's my opinion that Alternative 2 needs to be implemented in my conversations with people who know more than I do. And it would have paid for itself with all the damage that has occurred. So what are you saving the taxpayer if you look back over the years that this pump would have been implemented? What is the dollar cost? It's hard to say, because how do you quantify the total damage when you look at the environment, the wildlife, and last thing is the mental health of the region too. How do you quantify that? So based on all of those factors, I'm in favor of Alternative 2 for the South Delta Yazoo backwater pump. Thank you.
Hi there, I'm Phyllis Adams. I'm the mayor of Cary, just south of us on Highway 61. Thank you, thank you. May I also begin by saying thank you for your good work, your tireless and objective work to bring us the pumps in answer to our tireless campaign to finish the pumps. We cannot tell you how excited we are, nor how thankful we are to no longer have to live in fear of losing our homes, losing our crops, losing our livelihood, losing our wildlife and natural environment. In essence, losing our culture because of the senseless denial of finishing the pumps. Thank you for your good work, and thank you for the pumps. As mayor of Cary, I am here speaking for the good people of my great town. who in 2019 saw the backwaters reach the very edge of town, wreaking havoc with our water sewer systems and causing several families to vacate their homes. Praise God that these backwaters will no longer threaten our community. And speaking on behalf of the town of Cary, we ask you to support Alternative 2. Cary supports, wants, needs Alternative 2. You finish the pumps, why not provide the maximum benefit? Turn them on at 90 feet, start them at March 16th. As they say, timing is everything. And to get the maximum benefit from the pumps, the sooner the best. So I urge you to give careful consideration to Alternative 2 and choose Alternative 2 for the good of all, and this includes the wildlife. Thank you.
How are y'all today? I'm Smith Stoner. I'm from Holly Bluff. Fourth generation farmer, and my great-grandparents moved down here in 1919 from Indiana and bought our farm. So 2019 was a year that I was really, really looking forward to. Being our 100th year, same piece of property, 100th crop in our family, and we obviously did not get to have a crop that year. Instead, we were spending time building levees, pumping water, just all the different things that go along with the flood. And on top of that, my father was in the final stages of Alzheimer's. And so it was something that I was really looking forward to with, spending with him, and was not able to do that. And it was a huge mental health drain on our family during that time. And, but, it was, I'm trying to think. I'm not a very good public speaker, so y'all bear with me, please. Just watching all of our farmland just slowly go underwater, was depressing enough. And then it came to a point of, the wildlife. They were starting to move in. Families of deer, herds of deer were moving in on our farm. And we'd gotten where we were not cutting the grass just so they would have a place to live. And most of them ended up perishing right there. And, they're pushing for the Alternative 3 for more for wildlife, stuff like that. Well, what about all these wildlife that's dying? That's huge right there due to high waters. And just from a farming perspective, it would be very beneficial for us to be able to get the pumps cut on at an earlier date, and it would really be beneficial for a lower elevation for a lot of people in this room, not just farmers, but people that have been here for decades that don't want to move, don't want to leave, and don't want to have to ever boat into their houses again, because that's a huge drain on people especially that are getting elderly, having to figure out a way to come up with gas for boat motors, just different scenarios like that. And, it just would be very good for this community, because the farmland is just the beginning of impacting the whole community. Every business that's in this area, I would say in 50 miles outside of this area, is still going to be impacted from agriculture. If the agriculture is not making money, then a lot of other people are not making any money. They're going to close businesses, or they're going to be impacted in a more severe way than they would if we were able to grow a crop. And really appreciate everything y'all done on this project, and just please help us out so we don't ever have to experience any of this ever again. And please choose Alternative 2.
Hi, my name's Charlie Weisinger. I'm a loan officer at a bank in Greenville, Mississippi. I also farm with my dad in Cary, and I'm a landowner here in Sharkey County, right outside of Cary. My family's been farming in this area right outside of Cary since the 1880s. If you look around here, I see a lot of grown-ups that I grew up with. They're children, but I may be the youngest person of voting age in this room. The lack of the pump project is a major contributor to that, and I fear that, like myself and maybe for my boys, that we won't be able to return and continue our legacy of farming in this area without the pumps. We weren't able to plant the majority of our place in 2019 and about half of it in 2020. So alternative two, as Mr. Clay pointed out and Mr. Paul pointed out, it doesn't get us in field in time. It doesn't. I mean, we'll be delayed. It's better than nothing. And I want to look around this room. You know, the largest landowner in the affected area is the United States government. Between the National Forest, the Corps, and the additional WMAs in the area, the do-nothing approach has absolutely no benefit to the wildlife in the area. Buying additional land and planting trees in it that's going to flood and the trees are going to die, that does not provide any habitat for the wildlife, does nothing for the area. The people that work there, they don't have a stake in it. I mean, I don't know anybody that works for the Corps that lives in Rolling Fork. I don't know anybody that is a decision maker at the National Forest that lives in Rolling Fork. The people that want to protect the land, that want to protect the wildlife, are the private landowners. And that's, the yeomanry is the backbone of the United States. We've been that way since the inception. We're the ones that want to take care of this land. We're the ones that want to take care of the wildlife that lives there. We don't want to delegate that to the government. We've been here, we're still here. We want to continue to be here for our children. Mississippi, in my closing remarks, has the dubious luxury of being last on a whole lot of lists. Some of them are pretty terrible places to be. Women's health care in general, scholastic achievement, so forth and so on. But because of us not having the pumps, we're also the last major watershed in the Mississippi River Valley that doesn't have the pumps. So I ask you today to please revise it to a better starting date and a lower sea level than alternative 2. If not, we will accept alternative 2 as something better than nothing. And finally, please take us off the list, at least one list, of being last. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Fred Miller. I'm a former mayor of Rolling Fork. And my concern as a landowner and a son who farms are all the same that everyone else has had here. But one of the concerns that I have is in 1960, Sharkey and Issaquena counties had a total population of 15,000 people. And we're not unlike all the other rural counties in Mississippi and especially in the Delta. And in fact, most of the rural areas in the country have lost population. The 15,000 that we had in the 1960 census is now down to around 4,500 in the two counties combined. I don't know how much of that was caused by the floods that we've had, but it's significant. We look at agriculture as the single largest economic driver in the two counties, and probably not far behind that is hunting and fishing. And those things are things that we can't do without. So it's important for us to protect the wildlife. And it's also important for us to protect the population that we have now in the counties. It won't be long until our businesses, our churches, our schools will not have the necessary population to continue to be able to stay in business. So at this point, the best thing that we've got going for us, or at least the one that we think is going to be the best, is scenario 2. I would urge that, but I follow with all the rest of the people and say that it's important to us to stretch out our hunting season, stretch out our ag season as much as possible so that we can keep this nucleus of population that we have. Otherwise, we're going to be 2 counties that are going to have to go someplace else. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Thomas Jones, and I'm from Holly Bluff, Mississippi. And what the guy just left is talking about, we live what he's talking about. Our town it wasn't a big town, but now, with that floods have, since 73, people have been leaving. Every time the flood comes up, we lose head count. We lost our bank, we lost churches. Well, people used to have houses there. We don't have houses anymore because people come from other towns to come in and help the farmers farm, which, because people got tired of just working and, then don't have nowhere to stay no more. They had to come in from Yazoo City or Rolling Fork or different places. So we need the pumps to, so people, the few of us left, we can still stay in Holly Bluff. Because everybody's really getting tired of just moving out every so often. And really, for a few years ago, I didn't know that the pumps would help us. I didn't even know nothing about a pump. But now that I know there's a pump that can help us, please get us the pumps. Thank you.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jeffrey Mitchell. I'm a farmer and outdoorsman from Cary, Mississippi, and I'd like to thank y'all for being here. Charlie mentioned it earlier. One thing not many people have brought up is the Delta National Forest. If it's not the largest bottomland hardwood forest in the United States, it's in the top 5. And not exactly sure. I did the LIDAR data on it, but if you hold water in there at 93 feet, most of it's underwater. The wildlife that are there have nowhere else to go but out. Just like 19, 20, the other years we've had floods. The best plan that I saw was alternative 2. The cropping season doesn't quite match our cropping season. The USDA says we can insure our crop March the 1st. So that's when, if it's dry, we plant. And so corn has replaced cotton as the main crop in this county. And so because of our heat in the summer, the earlier you plant it, the better off you are. But it's, the elevations, the expanse of agriculture, it's not going to expand, but we need the land we have now to feed the population of Earth, going forward. The amount of people we're losing in this county is ridiculous, over the years. We need to keep what we have. Agriculture and outdoors are the only industries we have. We're not getting anything. It's 45 minutes to Walmart. So it's a tough place to live, but we all live here and we all love it. And we appreciate y'all trying to help us. We do need the pumps. We need to relieve, the worry and, what's this year going to bring or next year or whatever. The pumps will solve our problems. Like I say, in my personal opinion, the elevations are a little bit too high just because, at 90 feet, all the ditches are full. And we get a rain, it doesn't drain. It's hard to farm what's out of water because of one rain and it's underwater. But alternative 2 is the best proposal y'all have. I'd like some reconsideration on the cropping season dates and maybe the elevation, because the elevation for farming and wildlife. One of y'all mentioned the pondberry. I'd never heard of the pondberry until 2019, but apparently somebody thinks it's important. We think deer, black bears, raccoons, rabbits, turkeys, that's what's important to us because that's what we enjoy, that's what the people come to our town to enjoy, and we'd like for y'all to reconsider that. Thank y'all.
Hey, I'm Janae Brooks from Holly Bluff, Mississippi. Me and my husband owned a store, the only store in Holly Bluff, and during 19 we had to shut down for 2 months due to the flood. After that, we never could build back up. We had to borrow money from family and friends just to keep the lights on. And we just had to shut down in 2023, and it all stemmed from the flood. I've seen people here in this room that voted in groceries to their home. They helped sandbag for their neighbors. I've seen farm managers get addicted to meth, all due to a man-made flood. And the pumps could help that. You don't understand the strenuous mental health that it has. I've seen people get divorced. I've seen many people get on depression medicine. It has a huge impact on mental health, especially knowing that it could be prevented by pumps. I personally don't agree with any of these. I think if you need to cut the pumps on, cut them on. I mean, I don't understand why you have to have a set date, but maybe I'm not the smartest one in the room, But I do appreciate y'all being here and listening to us, and I thank you.
Hello, my name is Kevin Corbin. I live here in Rolling Fork, lived here most of my life. We appreciate y'all coming and listening to us. And I'm a crop insurance agent. Insure land down in the flood area. And I know this is a broken record, but I would prefer alternative number 2, but also with an earlier, start pump date, preferably March the 1st. If you don't cut those pumps on until the middle of March, and it takes 2 weeks to get the water off, you've missed prime corn season. Your yields are going to start to go down after that. So, and also I had a note here, I saw one of your slides that said you're going to want to save prime farmland. And there's a lot of prime farmland below 90 feet that gets flooded and, in a bad year, will continue to stay flooded. But also the USDA Risk Management Agency, which regulates crop insurance, they consider that high risk. Of course, it is high risk. And in being high risk, the premiums for farmers down there are 2 to 5 times higher than they are where you're standing right here. So that's millions of dollars of premiums that are coming out of their pockets that it shouldn't happen if we, had the pumps. And, you multiply that every year for the last 20, 30 years, if we've had federal crop insurance, you know, possibly we could have paid for the pumps by now. And, but anyway, again, I appreciate y'all coming, and I would prefer alternative number 2. It's not perfect, but we'll take what we can get. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Well, all right. Again, I appreciate you guys coming out, providing your comments, listening to us a little bit, and allowing us to hear what you had to say. Again, if you want to send us an email, send us a traditional mail, letter with your comments, you can. In the back of the room, we have comment cards as well. You can write them up and just drop them off here if you'd like. We will have our subject matter experts in the back of the room that can answer more technical questions for you. So feel free to stop by and see them on your way out. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Robin for closing comments.
Sorry, you caught me coordinating the next gig. Hey, I just want to thank everybody for your time and input today. It's always valuable to hear by those affected on any potential decision, but the care and thought you put into your messages is what really matters. And I always learn something from every engagement, so thank you for your time and your continuing help here. And
sir, would you like comments? Any closing?
The only comment I would have was I can't believe I came to a meeting and Peter didn't make a comment, so I appreciate that, sir, but I'll come chat with you. But thank you for all your participation.
Thank you, everyone.